Y'all, all my videos are for entertainment purposes, so let's keep it real. Don't try anything at home. Thanks, y'all.
Aw, good morning. Just 2 more minutes of sleep.
Welcome to a tiny little magical kingdom called Bithaca. Oh, my begonias, there you are. We're so happy you came. All our adventures are for the young at heart. No matter what our age, this is our version of gnome gardening. A stash of corn for later. Well, hey, welcome back, y'all. It is awfully nice to see you again. To support my channel, subscribe and click the notification bell. YouTube will let you know when I release a new episode. The sun has begun to dim, and the small army of owls have awakened from their slumber. Soon, most of Bithaca shall be asleep, including the king himself. King Blaze has given each owl an area to guard and protect. All of the owls within Bithaca is part of a royal order of guards. This group of guards is known as the King's Sentinels, which is made up of owls, a gargoyle, and the king's best friend, Winnie, a Sasquatch. As nocturnal animals, the owls guard at night, as even in a magical kingdom, this would be when it's at its most vulnerable. Throughout the kingdom, King Blaze had placed a metal perch for the owls to rest upon while they guarded the kingdom. Even when at rest, the owls are ever alert. Grayson Owl is the sentinel for the Minis area. You can see him most days out in the field watching over everything and everyone. But at night, he literally comes alive and is an awesome presence to see. As a night patrolman, all owls remain ever on high alert from nocturnal critters from different worlds and realms that may appear through a portal and cause harm or mayhem. Bithaca sits within an old hot tub, and even though hot tubs are very steep from top to bottom, very little detours a raccoon on a mission to hide her stash of seeds. Now, this particular hot tub had been filled with rich garden soil, and the very determined critter could smell that soil, and she just wanted to place her corn seeds here. But let's back up to a human cornfield and one hungry raccoon. Now, even though they are fun-loving and curious critters by nature, they are considered as one of nature's helpers. You see, raccoons bury their stash of seeds and nuts all over the place, and as a result, many seed-bearing things grow all over the forest. Our story begins with a soon-to-be Mama Raccoon. One night she had wandered into a cornfield, and after eating a few, decided to gather some to bury for later. Don't you know, she walked up and down that cornfield, row after row, wanting just to find the right spot to stash her corn seeds. She stopped in her tracks and began to walk backwards as she thought she spotted an exit that led to the forest. She continued to back up and was just about to turn and proceed towards her exit when, upon placing her foot one last step backwards, she suddenly appeared at the base of a hot tub. Blinking her little eyes in confusion, she stared at the object before her, realizing she was no longer in the cornfield. Seriously, she thought, all she had wanted to do was to bury her mouthful of seeds. So with a mouthful of seeds, she began to look for a place to bury them in. She walked all around the bottom of that hot tub, but found nowhere for her stash of seeds. So she continued to walk on around until she came to the fence that the hot tub was close to. She could reach the first slat of the fence, but the second one was just out of reach, so she backed down off the fence and walked alongside it until coming to the fence post. She began to climb effortlessly with her sharp claws. Once she reached the top of the post, she walked across the second slat until she reached the Mermaid Lagoon. She reached her arm over and grabbed the tiny mountain. Then she jumped over to the hot tub. Once here, she sat in awe at the tiny kingdom before her. Suddenly, with her eagle eyes, she spotted a tiny infant kit. It was sleeping soundly upon the ground under a tree. Why, her newfound mama instincts kicked in and she forgot totally about burying her seeds, yet she completely managed to hold them tightly within her jaws. It is unusual for an adult raccoon to want to protect another's baby. But this is a very young raccoon and a first-time mother. Unbeknownst to the slumbering mini-pet rock Roy raccoon, he was about to be adopted. Poor Roy was about to become the center of a major drama. Soon the owls sounded the alarm, which warned of an intruder within the kingdom. All sentinels rushed towards the intruder, who at this time was headed towards the mini area and the treehouse. She was far too large to roam within the kingdom, and many things became suddenly relocated. As she hurriedly set out a path towards Roy, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. Many residents barely had enough time to escape and were rescued by their neighbors. It did not take Roy long to realize that that raccoon was soon going to be at the treehouse. So he ran for all he was worth up that tree and into his hollowed-out tree knot. A very terrified itty-bitty dove down deep into the treehouse pond and disappeared plumb over to the frog pond. Everyone left to escape the raccoon's path. That mama raccoon reached her paw through the knothole and proceeded to try and fish Roy out. Now Roy, on the other hand, had absolutely no intentions of letting her ever catch him. She stretched and came close to catching him, but Roy rolled, crawled, and on occasions jumped over her paws to escape. It wasn't long before he grew very, very exhausted. Roy had been fast asleep like all the other residents of Bithaca, and too was awakened by the alarm of the sentinels. They had tried to stop her, but she was very determined to get to Roy. Why, she even kept her jaws clenched tightly around those corn seeds. Roy had just dodged a swipe at him as she almost caught him, when he noticed that she had become suddenly still, and in a low muffled voice he thought he could hear King Blaze calling to her. The raccoon couldn't answer the king as her mouth was full of seeds, and this would be just rude. The king continued to call to her, and all she could do was just look at him. Everyone was confused as to whether she understood or not. Fairy Sarah came and stood by the king and said,
There must be a way to communicate with her.
Sarah thought about using her telepathy, so she closed her eyes and tried.
Please calm down. How can we help you?
Sarah asked as calmly as she could, considering how scared she was. The raccoon sat on her haunches to look at Sarah. Intimidated by this, Sarah moved closer to King Blaze and took his hand. The raccoon once again stood up and continued to look at the small crowd before her.
Why, which one of you is talking to me?
She telepathically asked. King Blaze realized that Sarah had used telepathy on the raccoon and joined in on the conversation.
My name is King Blaze, and this is Bithaca. Are you hurt? Do you need our help?
He asked as he continued to move towards the raccoon, still holding Sarah's hand.
You know my language?
The raccoon asked in this very strange conversation of the mind. Remembering her corn seeds, she continued.
I wanted to bury my seeds and saw a sleeping kit I thought may be abandoned, and thought to raise it with my own once it was born, but I can't seem to fish it out of this tree.
Roy had no idea what was going on outside as he lay upon the floor, gasping for air so hard he thought his lungs would burst. The residents of Bithaca could tell that the king and Sarah were silently talking to the critter somehow. Many knew nothing about telepathy, but others themselves were telepaths and began to tune in to the conversation, much like a party line, and silently listened in.
Why, my dear, that's because our Roy is a fully grown mini pet rock raccoon.
Sarah said sweetly.
Well, that's good then. I'm so busy preparing for my baby, I wasn't so sure if I could take on another.
She telepathically said with a sigh of great relief. All of the telepaths smiled to themselves at Roy's potential mama. Clearly, it was a case of genuine concern for a lost kit, a completely unusual action for a raccoon. This young mother must have one of the biggest hearts.
Now, if only I could just bury my corn and find my way back to the old farmer's cornfield and my home.
She expressed. Now, Mabel Scarecrow had been noticing that the poor critter had been keeping her mouth clenched tightly as she held her clutch of corn seeds within her very tight jaws. Mabel stepped forward towards the raccoon and offered.
Sweetie, I have a little garden over there by our town sign, and you are more than welcome to bury your little stash there for later.
Now, Mabel was not a telepath and had no idea of the conversation. She just truly felt sorry for the coon and hoped she understood what she had offered. King Blaze explained what Mabel had offered, and the raccoon accepted and then followed her to bury her corn. Once she had finished, Winnie Sasquatch opened his portal to the humans' world and returned with her back to the old farmer's field. King Blaze had asked Winnie to seal the portal in the old farmer's field before returning back to Bithaca. Once again, all was well in Bithaca, and the residents have all returned to their nightly routine. Meanwhile, King Blaze had all the corn dug up and had the owls send it to the biosphere to be cryogenically preserved for later. That night, Mabel Scarecrow had a hard time falling asleep. You see, she had a wonderful idea for all of Bithaca. The next day, Mabel told King Blaze her idea, and he happily agreed. He then ordered that a full-size human kernel of corn be brought to the dragon's field. He then asked Mabel to go and find Whitley Ghost to help spread the word that there will be a town popcorn party held tomorrow in the dragon's field. The next day, the town gathered before the dragons and found two of the largest seeds they had ever seen. The crowd cheered as the dragons began to build up their gases from deep within their bellies, and then exhaled their fiery blasts out towards the unsuspecting kernels of corn. The dragons continued to send out fireballs to the wonderment of the crowd before them. The cheers roared with every blast until suddenly the kernel burst wide open so fiercely that it became airborne. The whitest, largest, and most fluffiest popcorn appeared over the crowd, who had fallen into sudden hushed silence. Rather quickly, gravity caused the popcorn to settle upon the town and all its residents. Beneath the utopia of deliciousness, the muffled cheers of a very excited and happy town could be heard.
That's awesome!
The entire community of Bithaca would be happily munching away throughout the night. Party on! It was sure nice spending some time with you. Y'all come on back for our next adventure. We'd love to see you. Until we meet again, be kind to one another. Bye now.
We sure do thank you all for tapping those buttons. Like, subscribe, and share.
May the magic of wonder always fill your heart.